Welcome to the Private Practice Startup Podcast, where we help ambitious private practitioners across the globe to brand themselves and grow their dream practices. We chat with successful private practitioners, business coaches, and marketing experts, bringing you tons of practice building ninja tips. Visit privatepracticestartup.com for awesome resources, attorney-approved private practice paperwork, and our signature marketing e-course. Here are your co-hosts, Dr. Kate Campbell and Katie Lemieux.
Hey there, Startup Nation. Welcome back to another episode of You Got It, the Private Practice Startup Podcast. How's everybody doing today? I hope you guys are doing well. As always, we are excited. And actually, this is a guest that we've had on before, and we call her like the double shot espresso. She is always full of energy, and we're excited to actually have her back. But before I tell you who our guest is today, we hope that you guys joined us last time as we spoke with Elizabeth Arias from Clearly Clinical on a topic that you guys had requested, and that is all about the dreaded notes. How can we get our notes done better and more effectively? So she talks about that topic with us and with you guys. If you're brand new to our podcast, we want to say welcome. We're happy you're here. We hope you stay around. We have a gift for you. Head on over to privatepracticestartup.com, slide on over resources tab, and there you will see, speaking of paperwork, we have our customizable attorney-approved private practice HIPAA form for you for free. So go ahead and grab that. So our guest today is, I'm going to let you guys think, who might this be?
Roll, please.
It is Tiffany McLain. Welcome back, Tiffany.
Thank you. And I was going to warn you too, I am actually not having coffee right now. So I was like, can I be like a double shot of espresso if I've had no espresso? So we're going to just have to see, folks. We're going to have to see.
No, you are always high energy and always like an amazing guest to have on. So today, Tiffany is going to be talking about money, race, and worth. So if this is your first intro to Tiffany, I wanted to share a little bit about her with you. Tiffany is a marriage and family therapist and consultant whose mantra is full fees are the new black. Via her program, the Lean In and Make Bank Academy, she helps therapists in private practice overcome their shame about making bank so they can help the clients they are truly passionate about serving without sacrificing their own well-being. So important. I can't say enough about that. Well, officially welcome back.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to talk to you both.
We are excited that you're here on this very important topic. We know you, but that doesn't always mean the audience knows you. So I don't know, where do you want to kind of begin? I know we usually start with a story, but I just feel like, since we know you so well, we kind of know you, but I don't know, maybe you share with people why you're so passionate about this topic, both about the money aspect, but also about race and how that all kind of works together.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me again. And yeah, you all know me, but I'm sure there are probably at least 10 people out there in the world who've never heard of me. I'm just kidding. There are millions and billions of you. So therapist and money, man. When I started out my journey, when I went to grad school, even at the interview where I was trying to get into this program, they said, why do you want to enter this program? And I was like, because I really want to help people. I knew in the back of my mind that I also wanted to have a private practice where I made good money and could actually experience some measure of wealth. But even then, even though I never had been in grad school, I didn't know any therapists, I knew I'm not allowed to say that part. And that stuck with me even as I went into grad school, went into my postgrad analytic internship, on to my practice. There was this pervasive feeling that we weren't allowed to talk about money. We weren't allowed to talk about wanting to build wealth. We weren't allowed to talk about wanting to do well financially as part of our therapist journey. So that was something that I started looking into. And when it comes to race, I'm biracial, Black, African-American, and white. And any of the issues we have around money, any of the anxieties, if you're a woman, and we can talk about the sociocultural impacts of the ways women have been systematically denied access to wealth and money. But then you add on, if you're a person of color, it's just exponentially more. And so really going into this field, wanting to do well financially and being a woman of color, I'm like, man, there's so many barriers to it. And then on top of that, as therapists, there's a shame to talking about it. So it's like, how are we supposed to make it up in the world? How are we supposed to get ourselves to a point of being financially solvent as women, as people of color, if we're not even allowed to talk about it or think about it? And if we do, we're shamed. And that's not in every industry, but it is particular in the therapy profession, that if you talk about wanting to do well financially, there's suddenly this binary setup. Oh, well, I want to help people. And I think it's particularly troublesome when you're talking to a woman therapist or a person of color therapist, that shaming and that, well, that's good for you if you want to make money, but I'm here to help people. That attitude is really problematic.
Yes. Oh gosh. So much of what you just said is, I just want to unpack so much of it. And I can remember in my own experience being in grad school, having a conversation with a professor who said, well, you didn't get into this field to make money. And in my mind, in the back of my mind, I knew exactly I was going into private practice because I was going to be able to help people and be able to make a living while doing so. And I did have shame about that I had to work through. And it is real. This stuff happens a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's very multifaceted, as you talk about. And interestingly enough, right, like if we look at the gender specifications in our industry, right, like it's about 70-75% women, right? And then you're looking at women of color, and already we have the whole issue about the money conversations, and then you're adding all of these different facets. Mm-hmm. And how does that affect the therapist, Tiffany? Like when you are trying to help people, but trying to make it in this world. I mean, I know you've gone through a lot of your own exploration and you coach so many people on this. Share with us some insights.
Absolutely, man. One of the exercises we go through in our program is an exercise around financial integrity, one's own financial integrity. So folks, I'm giving it away, but that's okay. So folks have to therapists have to look at their own life and see where is one area that they are out of financial integrity. One of the things that happens for therapists when there's so much shame and so much guilt around wanting to make money, wanting to do well financially, one of the results of that is that we become money avoidant. And I actually think money avoidance comes probably even before entering this field. There was a study done by a therapist and financial advisor, which is a very cool combination. His name is Brad Klontz. He does tons of articles, writes tons of research. And he actually wrote an article specifically about therapists and financial wealth, mental wealth or something like that, he calls it. And he found that therapists are more likely than any of the other professions he looked at to be money avoidant, to have an avoidant relationship, a fearful relationship with money. So if you are a woman, if you're a person of color, already you have a lot of anxieties about money. And then if you go into our field where, like you were saying, Kate, your professor says, well, if you want to make money, this isn't the field to come into. Then you have all of these things come in. And then when you go in to start your private practice, well, you have to set your rates. And so you're thinking, how am I supposed to think about this? I'm not supposed to be thinking about it. There's shame for thinking about it. I should want to just be here to help people. So then there's a whole bunch of anxiety, avoidance, fear, guilt, and that leads to all of those feelings, but it also leads to problematic behaviors like sliding one scale when you can't actually afford to do that, getting on insurance panels when you can't actually afford to do that, right? And then it also leads to, I've been noticing this more and more, a fear and an insecurity and a guilt about actually enforcing your cancellation policies. So we'll have therapists enter our program, and if they actually go back and add up all of the cancellation policies that they're not enforcing, if they even let themselves have, they might even have like a 24-hour cancellation policy, and they even feel bad about enforcing that. Tens of thousands of dollars per year therapists are leaving on the table because they're afraid to look at the reality of their financial situation.
It's so funny. I'm smiling, and I'm sure Kate is too, because this has been a situation for me as I look back, and Kate actually helped me look at it. And the funny thing is I was just talking about it this morning, and it was the $10,000 cancellation fee issue. And this was back when I was seeing like 25 to 28 clients a week. And I had this, I call it kind of like the feel bad one-time thing. But the reality is, as you talk about integrity, Tiffany, is like my integrity is, and I don't know if this is just my Northeast upbringing. If 2 months ago I said I'm going to be at the party at 5:30, I will be there. I don't need a reminder or whatever. It's my job to let you know. And so I was kind of like feeling bad and like, oh, things might happen and whatever. And then Kate and I like looked at it, and it had this very like loose 24-hour cancellation policy that was like, okay, well, I'll give you a one-time freebie, but then people weren't really using it because they were sick. It was like, I forgot, or can we reschedule? And then I felt bad because I had this in writing. And then Kate's like, I think you really should look at that. So I took a year time look, and this is where the data matters. And it was $10,000 that I lost because I didn't have a clear cancellation policy. And that day it changed.
Can you, I'm sure you've talked about this on your show before, but I don't think we could ever talk about it too much. Can you talk, Katie, about what led you to what feelings or thoughts or beliefs kept you from enforcing that policy consistently?
So I'm like, one of my biggest values in life is integrity, right? So here I had it in my paperwork, right? Like, okay, you're going to get like a one-time freebie. So I didn't feel like, here we talked about it, you signed it, and I'm offering you this freebie. And then it was just really unclear. So I didn't want to go back on my word, right? But in evaluating how it didn't work for me, because this also happened in a situation with supervision. Like one day I was doing Saturday supervision at the time, and like 3 of my interns within 45 minutes canceled. And I was driving to supervision pissed off, irritated, resentful, annoyed, and like that day is when I created an addendum and I explained to them, it's okay if you're sick, but if you're not feeling well, you need to let me know 24 hours in advance. Like, hey, just FYI, because my belief is everything can be worked out in communication, right? Like, if it's a true emergency, it's a true emergency, but those things happen so far and few between. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so, like, I think what came after it is like valuing my own integrity. Like, this is my word. This is what I said to you, right? But then what came below that when, it was either unclear on either, I didn't feel like I was honoring myself, was the resentment, the frustration, the annoyance. And we can't bring that into the space of therapy. We can't. And so when you talk about like those indirect effects, is like, how is your relationship with money and not communicating about that now impacting the quality care? Because if you're sitting there with a client and they owe you for 4 sessions, you're thinking about that. How am I going to bring this up? It's kind of like the first 5 minutes when you meet a new client for the first time and there's like this hint about like abuse or something like that. And you're like, okay, I got to build rapport, but we need to talk about this. So it's on your mind. And you're like, okay, you know what I mean? It's like navigating all of that. But if we're not clear on that, or there's no clear policies and whatever, I feel like I'm being interviewed now.
That's what I do. I know, but here's the thing is therapists need to hear that we all have struggled with this and that they're not alone with it. Because I think the shame comes when we're thinking, oh, I'm resentful, I'm irritated, and I'm also not enforcing my thing, but I shouldn't because maybe I wasn't clear. And then it just spirals for months and then years, where you're 10 years in your private practice and you're still doing these things that are out of integrity with yourself and also not working for your business.
There are so many ways to keep your practice organized, but Therapy Notes is by far the best. Their easy to use, secure platform lets you not only do billing, scheduling, and progress notes, but also create a client portal to share documents and request signatures. Plus, they offer amazing unlimited phone support. So when you have a question, they're there so you can get help fast. Get started with Therapy Notes today, trusted by over 60,000 professionals. Go to therapynotes.com and enter promo code PPS, as in Private Practice Startup, and you'll get 2 months for free. Also, you can listen to episode 54, where we interviewed Brad Pleiner and took an in-depth view into their EHR.
You didn't become a therapist to reconcile your expenses or figure out tax deductions. Herd Bookkeeping and Tax guides your private practice with affordable bookkeeping, one-on-one expert help, and tax support so you can get back to seeing clients. This means no more fiddling around with those spreadsheets, overpaying accountants, or guessing your quarterly tax payments. Herd is the only financial platform designed exclusively for you, mental health professionals. Just ask Melanie Evans, a clinical social worker from New York. Melanie says it's great to have an expert to turn to whenever I have a question related to accounting. Knowing that my bookkeeping and taxes are in good hands, I can really focus on the more clinical parts of my work. Whether this is your first year in practice or you're an experienced clinician, Herd Bookkeeping and Tax helps you manage your practice finances with ease at a price you can afford. Visit joinherd, HEARD.com to schedule a consultation and see how their services can help your practice thrive.
So I'm curious, Tiffany, about like the unique things that women of color and people of color deal with, and like what are the thoughts and beliefs around helping professions and money? Like, is there this, like, you should help because what? Share with us about that.
I'll say a couple of things. So there was another article by this woman, Ella Lasky, I believe is her name. Actually, I found her. I'm like, she's still alive? I think she's probably young, but she wrote this article in the 80s, and then I found out, I could just look her up and find her. And I emailed her, and she never emailed back. Ella, come on. So here's the deal. She wrote this article where she looked at the family of origin of therapists. And she found that therapists were more likely than their siblings even to be serving the role of helper in their family of origin, the one who mediates conflict, negotiates, makes sure things go well within the family. So we get it from our family, even studying. Oh, you can say, what are you saying there?
I said, that's me. I was always the peacekeeper,
Yes.
the helper, managing all the conflict for the family. Yep, that's me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's there. Why do we get drawn into therapy if not for our very identity being tied into helping people resolve their conflicts or feeling better or finding something in themselves to be able to move forward. But it's not really in themselves because we're doing the work. So it comes from our family of origin, and we have a sense that our value comes from serving this role. Our identity comes from serving this role. So already there, if we think about charging, that goes against our feeling of goodwill or the feeling of what we're supposed to be doing, which is just doing this because this is what we do. So then there is a conflict there. And then societally, we already talked about professionally. We're not here to make money. We're not here to get back. It's filled with helpers. So then there's shame if you're also saying, and I want to take care of myself. And then in the larger society, there's two things. I think generally about women, not women of color specifically. We were talking about this before. I think it wasn't until the 60s that women could open their own bank account outside of their husbands, assuming, that's all has all kinds of problems in that, or their fathers. And then not until the 70s that women could open their own line of credit. So there's all kinds of things societally around women aren't good with money. You're not allowed to even have money up until, 40 years ago, 30, 50 years ago? Like, what are we talking about? So then there's a generation, we are still living amongst a generation who couldn't even open their own line of credit. So there's the intergenerational stories about what women are allowed to manage. And we take those in ourselves, like, I'm not good with money. How many women have that story? I'm just not good with money. So that's women generally. And then if we add in being a person of color, I was reading this book called Black Fortunes that I had to stop because it was so hard to read. But it talked about Black millionaires in the United States over back in the 1700s. 1800s. And I was like, what? There were Black millionaires then? This is amazing. And to read these stories about how over and over again, these folks would build wealth and then it would be taken away from them, sanctioned by the government. So I'm getting goosebumps even thinking about it. You do all this work, you build this thing, you finally have it, and then it gets burned down, or you get killed, or your father gets killed, it gets taken away from you. So there are many people of color, and I think also women generally, who have the fear that if I build up this wealth, something's going to happen and take it away from me. And it's just this terror constantly therapists in private practice have. This thing I work so hard is going to be taken away from me. So why even try? And that comes, especially if you're a person of color, from our history, and a legacy of having the thing you worked very hard for, not only be stolen from you by an individual, but actually having the entire government backing up that thing being taken from you. So it is like, it's a total mind. Can I swear on this show?
It's you, girl. It's your authentic self.
It's a total mind fuck around what it means to actually step into it. So not only are you told you're not allowed, and then you're told you're not good at it, so the government's going to be like your daddy state around it. But then even if you go farther back, it's gotten taken away from you over and over and over again.
Wow. But yeah, as you shared that story, I got goosebumps as well, man. And so it's almost like, well, why bother? Right? Like it's almost like more traumatic, right? Like it's going to be taken away. So, and it's kind of like a learned helplessness in a sense, right? Like, so never mind.
So much trauma.
Yeah. So before we continue, let's just take a quick moment for our sponsor. Okay, guys, it's sponsor time. You know what? Instead of reading a script about Gusto's payroll and benefits, we wanted to tell you what small business owners say, the people who use Gusto every day. Here's what one small business owner says. With Gusto, I think of payroll as a 30-second job. The website is so friendly and a joy to use. Friendly payroll? You don't hear that every day. And how about Amy from Utah? Amy says, I love Gusto so much. It's so painless. It's like going to the spa, and we have great options and rates, even though we're a super small team. Like going to the spa? Wow. And here's what Amneet says about Gusto's support team. Whenever something comes up, I reach out and literally 24 hours later, they tell us what to do or assure us that we've already handled it. Smart technology and friendly humans, that's super cool. Honestly, the list goes on, and right now our listeners get 3 months free when they go to gusto.com/PPS. Yep, 3 months of payroll, benefits, administration, and more, totally free.
Again, that's gusto.com/PPS.
Good stuff. I love that you're like sharing this, like, historical stuff and this intergenerational things and how that kind of passes down. And so when we're looking 60, 70 years ago, and also back in the 1800s, how does that information continue to pass down? Like, what are the messages that, people of color are hearing from, their family?
Really interesting. It's actually interesting because I think that there is both the, and again, I don't like to talk about Black folks as a monolith because we're not, but also these messages, we do have a shared history in the United States if you're African American, and have been here for some time. So I think there's both the desire, of course there's the desire for wealth. And I think we were talking before the show about how my partner and I, he's white, but still comes from a family where there's a lot of psychic poverty, I will say. It's this feeling of constantly striving to even get to a point of feeling okay. So there's for generations, we have not had the opportunity to build generations of wealth. And I think about the feeling of safety and security that one has when they know, like if you know that no matter what happens, you have enough money to be able to pay the doctor bills. Or if there's an accident, you can afford it. If your kid gets sick, you can take care of it. Whatever the case is, that security is something that I think most Americans don't have. I know most Americans don't have it. And it's certainly not something therapists have, and a lot of people of color also don't have it. So when you're going into building your business or starting a practice and you have this general sense of, I'm not safe on the most foundational level, it's really hard to take risks. Like, all right, I'm going to raise my fees. And I'm going to trust that I have the internal skills to find people who are willing to pay me that. There's also a feeling, this is for women and also people of color, nobody's going to pay me that. They might pay that a psychoanalyst white man in his 1942 smoking a cigar. They'll pay that guy that, but they're not going to pay someone like me that. So those are some fears and insecurities. And then there's also the relation to, especially the therapists I work with, we come from a working class background. We might have been the first in our families to go to college. So there's the feeling of, I don't want to, there's so much of our own trauma. We project so much into our businesses and our clients around, if I do well and succeed, I'm separating from the people I come from my own origin. I'm making mental health inaccessible to the people who need it. And often with that, there is the feeling of, when I needed help, I didn't have anyone who helped me. So then we bring that into our business and say, I don't want to become the reason somebody's not able to get help. And all of those things get mixed up together. They don't even become real thoughts that we can analyze critically. They just become gut feelings that we act out of.
Interesting. And one of the things as you were talking, what also resonated with me is, and this is true really for any industry, whether you're a CPA or, an attorney, realtor, whatever, like when we go to school and we get master's, doctorates in our profession, we've never really had the business marketing, sales knowledge. So, I know my story is very similar to most, as I came into private practice with zero plan, right? With zero savings of, investing in marketing. And so when you talk about, and I share my story, and this was almost a decade ago now, or a decade ago at this time, I was kind of consistent and I knew I had to work at my business a little bit, but then I decided to leave full-time work and go into full-time private practice right in November, right during the holidays. And I remember I was making like $500 a week and having to pay Cobra. And so you can't take risks because with what money am I supposed to grow things? And then that's where you fall into that DIY mentality, which is also a scarcity mindset. Right? Further kind of feeding into that until people meet someone like you or us, and we're beginning to talk about and uncover those things and help them feel safe, secure, and stable so they can make advances. And I think it's a beautiful process, right? I think business is your own internal work, right? Because that's what you're projecting outwards. But then when we're talking about money, is we have to do the work here first so we can feel confident out here, right? And continue to work with the people that we're called to serve. And like that mentality of like, well, I can't, have private practice, or I can't, charge my full, I need to stay on insurance because I need to serve as many people as I can. That's not good for anybody. It becomes exhausting and can lead to burnout. I mean, unless you are completely energized by seeing 35 clients a week, awesome. But most people, aren't. It can be very exhausting and draining.
That's absolutely right. And I think about what you were even talking about in terms of our own feelings of resentment or irritation or fear, all of those things, how they play into our practices. And then if we're seeing 30 people on top of that, it's inevitable that we are not. And I wouldn't even say the daring thing that I'm, oh, she said that. I don't think anyone can see 35 people a week and be doing excellent clinical work. Because where is your time for your own ongoing consultation? Where is your time to be reading articles and keeping up? Where is your time for training and self-care? Where's your time for your own therapy, right? If you're seeing 35 people a week, plus the notes, plus all the mental work that comes along with that, I don't think you can be doing good work.
This is really good conversation, Tiffany. I'm definitely enjoying it. And for people who might be wondering, like, Kate really hasn't chimed in much. Kate must be having tech issues today, so we actually keep losing her on and off. So if you hear these little sounds in the background, that's where she went, and magically she'll just reappear and join back. But Tiffany and I are going to keep it going because this is a really good conversation. Where should we go next? What would be an important?
You know what? Actually, one thing when you were talking that struck me when you were talking about investing in our practices. And you said you got to do your money work as a foundation. I was like, yes, because there are so many people who hear about lean and make bank or the idea of doing money work. And they say, okay, I will after I do my marketing. And I'm like, oh no, because part of the problem is if you have a poverty mindset, if you have anxiety, guilt, fear about charging for the value of your services, if you do not understand and embody the transformational work of your what you do as a therapist, then that's going to be infused in your marketing. So I have all these therapists who have been in practice for a long time. They're really good marketers. They've done a good job. And then you still find that they're charging, $125 per session and burnt out and overwhelmed. And now they just have a ton of people at $125 or $100 or $50 per session, right? If we're going to be honest. And so they've done all this marketing work, but they never worked on shifting their relationship to money and their relationship to charging for the value of their work as therapists. And so they're now still in the place they started, square one. And the problem is now they have a full practice of people who they're charging $80 to $100 and they can't sustain it, but they already have existing relationships. So it's even more problematic than had they done this work before they went out and got all these clients.
Yeah. And one thing that I would say is, having coach mentoring or just an accountability partner to shift that. I mean, I can't tell you how many times in our coaching that fees and money gets discussed and people have breakthroughs in the work that we do because it's like, I remember one of our coachees, she's like, this was when around the Parkland shooting had happened down in our area, and a whole I don't know if they turned into a nonprofit, but anyways, they were a group of therapists that were working to support kids, families, and things like that. And she had been doing some pro bono work, and she had been seeing this woman for like 6 months. And here she was coming in and talking about her dog or whatever. And clearly whatever trauma she had was past. And it was like, she was starting to feel that feeling resentful and irritated. And, we talked about that and had her commit to herself really about having this conversation. And, that's the beauty. And it's interesting, Tiffany, right? Like I remember way back when I was doing some certain body of work, I've done many, the guy, the teacher, the guru said to me, he goes, Katie, there's two ways to do your work. You can either go after it or you can wait till it comes up and you're faced with it and you have to deal with it. Right. So if we know we have these money issues or whatever, I know for me, before I became a book reader, I actually read The Energy of Money, which was written by a psychologist. And I walked through all the exercise in there and then I did it again. But again, I always see, our businesses and our lives, but a lot of our business, because it's kind of like whatever I throw out there, it's an exact mirror of what's coming back. Yes. And is an opportunity if we can see it to go, this isn't working. And always for me as a therapist, emotions have always been my barometer, right? So other than feeling touched by what a client is sharing or saying or just feeling human, if I'm getting irritated at the client or annoyed, like that's about me, that's the opportunity to do my work. So if I'm getting irritated and frustrated and resentful that this client is now canceling for the second time and I don't know how to handle this, that's my opportunity to do my work,
Yes. Absolutely. Yes.
Kate has reappeared.
I have magically reappeared. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened, but our internet went out and I tried to join with my hotspot and that wasn't working either. So I'm sure you guys have noticed the dinging randomly as I join the room as you're listening to the podcast. So I missed out on a bunch of the good. So I might disappear again, but I'm here for it.
And And now you're sounding like your internet is lagging behind. But yep, Tiffany are keeping. We were hoping that you could come back and join the conversation, but we'll keep it going. And Kate's here, guys.
You can type in the chat if you have questions.
Too funny. Now I kind of lost like where we were at about doing our work. You were talking about like the marketing aspect, right? Yeah. So if you are doing all this beautiful marketing, yet you're still getting these clients and you're still feeling resentful, the marketing seems to be working, but you're not valuing yourself. What are some of your favorite, like either books, articles, things that you do to have people, I mean, I know there's your course, but is there a book that you just like really love that you're like, you all have to read this?
I haven't not heard of The Energy of Money, so I need to check that out. There's one that I'm so sad. It's called Secrets of a Millionaire Mind. It has this terrible purple cover with this gold leaf kind of, it's real corny. Oh, you have it right there. Oh, yours has a better cover than mine. And so it's written by this dude, and he even references Trump. This is all back in the day. And so there's a lot of, Katie's showing me all these books.
I have my money bookshelf. I'm in the different office today, so I have my shelf right next to me. So there we go. We'll put these on the show notes.
Yeah, put them on the show notes. And so I do like the Secrets of the Millionaire Mind has been like mind-blowing, and folks have to wade through the bro nature, the references to Trump, it's not particularly psychologically minded or politically correct. But this is also one of the things we teach in our program is there are going to be messages you get that you don't like the messenger. But sometimes because there haven't been a lot of, women and people of color haven't had the opportunity to be messengers very often. So we got to wade through a lot of bullshit to get the message out of there. And my thing is like, wade through the bullshit because you can then go out and have a voice and play bigger and speak up. And people who are going to resonate with you or see themselves in you are going to be able to also make change. But for many generations, we've had to learn from the folks who have had access to resources. And those are not typically the people who we probably want to be learning from. But I say wade through that shit because there's a lot of gold in there too.
Yeah, you can definitely learn something from everybody, even if it's what you don't want to do. Or what you don't
exactly.
Want to
Yes.
Oh, Tiffany, this has been an awesome conversation, and I'm always energized by your energy and presence. Any like final thoughts that you want to make sure that we, share with the audience today about what we're talking about before we kind of wrap up? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to throw a bombshell at the end here. Sorry, folks. And talk about this idea. I really think it's important to start thinking about this idea of what made me think about this is your Parkland example of giving back out of the goodness of our hearts as therapists or sliding our feet. I'm going to put out of the goodness of our hearts in quotes to be nice. There are implications to that relationship. There are implications when we lower our fee for somebody, and not just for our pocketbook, but also for the therapeutic relationship. It's very, there could be classist reenactments. There could be racist reenactments around the idea of, I'm going to be the nice benefactor therapist who's going to give to you out of the goodness of my heart. That can lead to the client feeling guilty if they ever have feedback for you. They could feel anxious, like, oh no, this therapist is doing me a nice favor, so I better show up and be the good, compliant client, right? There are a lot of things that happen when we kindly lower our scale in order to give back to others. Those others become, in essence, a charity case. And so, again, I'm not saying don't do it, but if we're doing it, I think we need to be talking with our clients about what it means that I lowered my fee for you, that I'm seeing you at a reduced rate. What does it bring up? Do you feel like you have to be kind? Does it feel like I'm a kind benefactor? In what ways are we reenacting a problematic relationship in your current life or in your past? And I guarantee you're likely reenacting problematic patterns. And I promise you're reenacting problematic patterns if you're not talking about it. If you're lowering your fee and being the nice person and doing all these nice things for them in a relationship that's mutual, where two adults are entering into it, but that's kind of, we're glossing over the charity aspect of it, there's a problem in that.
And are you talking about when a therapist just decides because they want to or they're hearing something, or are you talking also about when a client asks?
That's interesting. I think, especially when a client asks. I mean, one of the things we talk about with our therapist is basically when, if you lower your fee to take on someone else, you are subsidizing their treatment out of your own wallet. That's a fact of the matter. So that could even be if somebody asks, hey, can you slide your scale? A question to come back is, you're asking me to subsidize your therapy. Well, let's talk about that. Because that's the reality. And so really asking them to take responsibility for the ask that they're basically saying, will you open up your wallet or your credit card and swipe it here for me? Right? Like, that's a dynamic at play. And we need to know how to have ethical, appropriate clinical conversations about that kind of financial arrangement between two adults.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you have a child. Unless it's a kid.
And in your opinion, when is it okay, or when does it make sense for a therapist to do that?
That's a good question. I think a couple of things have to be in place. On the therapist side, the therapist actually has to be financially taken care of. Maybe you have a wealthy spouse, or maybe you come from a wealthy family, or maybe you've done well yourself and this is a second career, or even your first career, and you have, 10 clients at $300 per session. So it's actually no problem that you can slide your fee to $50 for the one person you've chosen. So it has to be an intentional decision. Your bills are paid. Your student loans are being paid on. You have your own retirement account. You're able to pay for your supervision, training, wonderful vacations, massages, right? If that's all in place and you want to make the decision to slide your scale, I think that's fantastic, number one. And then number two, once all that's in place and you think, I want to give back through sliding my scale, there are a couple of things there. I think it needs to be talked about, because it does have an impact on the relationship. I remember when I saw a white man therapist for $50 per session, there were all kinds of parts of myself that I couldn't bring to that therapy. And when I finally I got a PPO insurance, and I was finally able to pay his full fee of $180, and I brought more of myself, my anger, my frustration. I wasn't so nice and funny all the time, and the therapy fell apart. He didn't want that. So I think often we don't know what we're reenacting when we slide our scale. And so I might even encourage therapists to think about, what are some other ways you can give back? Does it have to be in sliding your scale? Can you be a big brother, big sister? Can you be a mentor in some adult business program? Can you run for office, right? Like, what are ways you can give back that don't require you to do it via your therapeutic relationship directly? Can you do supervision? And I think even potentially you could provide therapy to another therapist who's up and coming. But man, you got to be talking about those dynamics. You got to be talking about that as part of the process.
Yeah, I like that you say that. I think what, highlights for me is the intentional part. Like, you're really clear, like this isn't a feeling out of guilt or whatever it is. And, I think often that, for me in my own money journey, right? You talk about money avoider. So when I actually did, it used to be the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker. Yes. And then it switched into the Millionaire Mind Intensive is what I did. And they talked about money avoiders, money monks, money spenders, and savers. And I fell in the saver category. But the reality is all the energy behind that was scarcity. Yeah. Right? Because it's not going to be enough. Like, I even would bank at least 2 weeks of vacation just in case anything happened. Like, who's going to take care of me if I get sick or can't work, or, one of the things that they taught me through that was talking about, I know that Dave Ramsey talks about the envelope system, and this is different. This is really to build wealth. And they talk about the jar system. And one of those jars was for play, and one of those jars was for give, right? And so sometimes if we don't have the money to give back, we can give with our time. But I found such freedom in having my play jar. And the only rule about the play jar is every quarter you have to blow the money. You cannot keep it. You have to spend it on something that brings you joy. And then also the give jar, because say you have $1,000 come in, and then the money gets allocated in different jars. There are 6 jars. And then 5 or 10% is give. It gave me the freedom to give much more joyfully, rather than feeling like, oh, this is being taken away from me. And so the energy, right, behind the money is really important. So if you were a vet, or your dad was a vet, or whatever, and you feel like, hey, for vets, I want to see them at this rate if they can't, right? And I'm good with that because it brings me joy. Okay, great. Yes. You know what I mean? But I think those are the important things, is the intention. I love the discussion around it. And just really checking your own emotional barometer around why you're doing what you're doing. Because if you're bringing those resentment, frustration, guilt, the feel bads, then it's just not a good place.
That's exactly right. And I think that most therapists, when they talk about sliding their fee, it comes from a place of, my fee is $150, but what can you afford? Fear. I want this person to come in. I'm afraid of somebody leaving me, right? There's so many feelings involved as opposed to making a thoughtful, intentional decision.
100%. And I remember being in those days.
Me too.
I remember that.
Me too.
My fee was $85 when I started, but $40, that's fine.
That's right.
Because it was way more than what I made in community mental health. Wow, I think I was making $26 an hour in community mental health, so that was a raise.
But the thing is, community mental health, I don't know what the case was for you, but maybe you had health insurance, maybe you had benefits, right? If we're charging $40 per session, what about our office expenses, our health insurance? All of that comes out of that $40. And then I had someone email me a few weeks back who said after all was said and done, she was making about $23 an hour. I'm like, this is a licensed therapist who's supporting a family, and she's afraid to raise her fees. This is what she feels like is the best she can do. And I'm like, no. It's difficult to see.
Yeah. So for me, I'm going to say, look, if you are listening to this podcast and it's resonating with you or pissing you off in some way, you probably should reach out to Tiffany and start really working on your money mindset stuff, or, definitely grab one of the books that we recommend and start working there for sure. I know I always love talking about money. Why? Because it's been one of my issues. And look, and even it's interesting how you talk about, when you are taken care of, and I am at this point in my life and I've started a new business, and it's a whole different experience because I'm not in a scarcity mindset, but there's a ceiling, right? And there's a ceiling for me that I have to continue to break through and look out, what is that next level? What is my relationship to money here? What's coming up? And it's very interesting being the observer, starting a new business, knowing what I know, but also watching it play out. It's very interesting.
So fun too. Like you said earlier, our businesses are a reflection of who we are inside as people. And I think our bank accounts are the same. That I actually want to check that, because that could have all kinds of ideas about poor people are one thing, rich people are another. But in terms of us as therapists, as we're building a business, our relationship to money is a reflection of the stories we have and the beliefs we have about ourselves and our ability to go out there and build wealth. So it's really interesting to play with pushing ourselves to grow beyond our limits financially or in terms of our business. And inevitably, we will grow as humans too, and we will be more in line with our own integrity.
Yeah, I love that, how that's where we started, and that's a great place to finish at. And Tiffany, I know that you have a gift for our audience. What is that?
Yes, we have a fee calculator. Okay, and this is great. So for you therapists out there who are like, okay, I'm ready to do it. I want to set my fee based on the reality, not my fear and anxiety. You can go fill out this calculator. We walk you through every step. If you're worried about math, like I don't know how to do math, we do the math for you. We have you input your money, your current budget, your dream budget, and the hours you want to work in your ideal private practice. And then this calculator will spit out the fee that you need to be charging in order to have the lifestyle you want to have. And you can get that if you go to heytiffany.com/fee calculator, but it'll also be in the show notes.
Awesome. And thank you so much for that. It's interesting. That was like such a novel concept. After I learned how to build a business, it's like, oh, you should figure that all out first and then work backwards. Oh, you mean you just don't decide your fee willy-nilly? That's what I did. And I know so many people do that. So get clear on really, Kate and I talk about really living your ideal lifestyle. And, if it's not there yet, it's something to work towards, but at least you have an idea rather than just grasping some fee out of the air or going on Psychology Today or looking online at what everyone else is charging. That's not how you should be charging.
Absolutely. You have no idea what other people's situation is. So base it on your life.
I'm glad you say that. All right. Last point. So one thing that I had my own money work was when people would use the words expensive or they would mention finances, I had to learn that I have no idea what that means. I don't. When people say, oh, is therapy expensive? Or I've been looking around and it seems expensive. I've learned to just shut my mind off of that, provide my value, have the conversation about my fee. And if they can do it, they can do it. I don't know what expensive means to them.
Yes.
Yeah. So awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. It's always a joy to have you. And we hope that you guys join us next time. Whoever that will be a surprise because we will be eager to see who our next guest and topic is. Startup Nation, if you enjoyed this show, and you know what, if you have a friend or colleague that needs to hear this message, please send this over to them or text them the link or say, go visit privatepracticestartup.com. And if you do happen to be on our website on the podcast page and you want to hear more of these episodes, go ahead and click the link so you don't miss an episode. We release a new episode every week. So we have over 200 plus at this point. So you can check out that on our website. So as we say, thank you for allowing us to inspire you from startup to mastery. Have an awesome and inspired day, everybody. Take care.
Thanks for joining us on The Private Practice Startup. Visit theprivatepracticestartup.com for awesome resources, free trainings, attorney-approved private practice paperwork, and so much more.